Good evening. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. And tonight we have the second installment of our webinar series, Assessing New Markets in this Time of Uncertainty. I'm Saeed Mahmood. I am Associate Professor and Extension Specialist here at Ohio State. First, just a few words on how this all started. So we, and by we mean three different institutions in three states: Ohio State, Future Generations University in West Virginia, and Penn State, a very small school in Pennsylvania. We have what is known as an ACER project from the US Department of Agriculture. So when all this COVID-19 closure started, work on the project has been really, really slow. But then when we started to realize the actual, the extent of the impact of all of this on syrup producers, we realized that we had to do something to help all of you, the producers. So we talked and planned for a number of weeks. And these webinars are the results of all of that work. And I hope that these would be useful to you. Today's focus is economics and finance as it relates to new markets. And we have an impressive line of speakers tonight. So our first speaker is Mark Cannella. He comes to us from the University of Vermont Extension, that state up in the Northeast. I'm told that they make a little bit of syrup. I'm not sure. He's a farm business management specialist there. And he's going to talk to us about COVID business planning and beyond. So it's all about business plans and so on. And then Zachary Smith also comes from the same institution, University of Vermont. He is an ag business educator there for the extension service. And he's going to talk to us about getting into the world of online sales. Then we have Marlo Long. She is Senior Vice President of Community Development at BB&T Bank, which I'm told now called Tourist. And she's going to talk to us about bankers and farmers, how to work together for success. And then last but not least, we have Glenn Goodrich of Goodrich Maple, and he's going to talk to us about bulk syrup sales, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Just a couple of housekeeping issues. You can ask questions throughout the presentation and after the presentations. There is a Q&A button. You'll see a Q&A an icon toward the bottom of your screen. You can use that to ask questions. Please address your questions to a specific speaker. Obviously, the speaker as the speech is going on, the speaker will not be able to respond. But then after the talk is done, the speaker will come up, will try to answer your question. And then these presentations are going to be recorded and they will be posted. And Karen will talk more about it later on toward the end of the session. With that, I will invite Mark Cannella, our first speaker.
Okay. All right, thank you, Saeed. This is Mark Cannella. I'm going to take a second to get set up. And good. Well, thanks for the introduction, and thanks much for having us. I'll be presenting here, and Zach Smith, my coworker, will be presenting in about a half an hour. So we're excited, always excited to talk about what we know about business planning and share our experiences and answer questions. So I'm a farm business specialist with University of Vermont Extension. I do a lot of work across a number of sectors, do quite a bit of business planning and financial work with maple producers. Today, I'm going to really discuss, I would say, fundamentals to business planning. We certainly know a lot of folks are dealing and navigating with the COVID-19 disruption. And so what I'd ask you to do is listen to these basic fundamentals that haven't changed so much and really think hard about how your business planning may be different now than it was 3 months ago. And in some cases, you may find some of your business fundamentals don't need to change, or certain aspects. So I'm going to work through some business planning fundamentals, talk a little bit about the experiences we're hearing with business owners trying to adjust and pivot to COVID. I'm going to lay off the digital marketing and digital entrepreneurship because Zach will be diving into that in the next session. So we'll begin with that. Core to any business planning process is really understanding that all the pieces have to fit together. As a business planning educator, I always push people to say, when I talk with people or I present, I challenge people to work on the things that don't come easy to them. Let's assume that you've got a couple things under your belt already, but really look hard in the mirror and think about the things that are really difficult, don't come naturally, or maybe someone on your team doesn't gravitate towards. And then let's try to figure out how to fill that hole and address it, because your business needs all the components of a sound business plan. Even if you as the owner aren't the expert in all of them, it is your job to oversee or facilitate so that somehow those functions do get executed. So let's look through some basic business fundamentals and we'll see how it goes. They mentioned we also have a one-page business planning sheet that some of you got via email. I'd encourage you to go to our website as well, www.maplemanager.org, and you can see it there. Sometimes the idea of business planning can be intimidating. Some people think it has to be a 15, 20-page document. I've been a part of those planning processes. I've co-written many 15 and 20-page business plans, but we've really scaled it down to a one-page business plan on the front and back, where you could follow along and fill in the blanks tonight or do it after. It doesn't need to be a huge volume to be good, solid business planning that can help you advance your objectives. So I'd encourage you to work with that even as I'm talking tonight. I mentioned this website. This is a site that's up and running now. We've got a number of business planning tools. I think I'll show one later on as well. Some business calculators for pricing, for establishing yield averages. We're adding leasing templates. A sugar house lease should go on in the next few weeks. We've got a sugar bush lease up there, and new forestry resources will be coming up over the next few months. We also have an Ask the Team. So if you have questions that we don't get to tonight, don't hesitate to post a question on that website. We'll answer it within a few days, and then other people that see the website will benefit from reading the frequently asked questions on the website. One last program plug. We are still doing our Maple financial benchmarking project here in Vermont. We've expanded it into the Northeast. So assuming we might have an audience from all over the country here, I will say that we do have capacity to work with people in the Northeast on benchmarking for over 10,000 taps. But we've been practicing pretty good at doing virtual work these days. So if you're interested and you're not in the Northeast, please reach out to me anyway. And we'd be glad to have a conversation to see if we can find a way to work with you and work with your business. It's a cool project. It's one of my favorites. I'm a firm believer, but that giving people information on their cost of production is a key that really can unlock a lot of important business decisions for your strategy and your marketing. So think about your business plan. Think about your business. What determined your startup scale? Oftentimes we start where we know. We start with things we're familiar with. So you may have had a startup vision, easily accessible markets or a typical profile. People know how to access a certain sales channel because they've seen a friend do it, or perhaps they have a friend or a family member that works in the restaurant industry, so they understand how to get into basic direct wholesaling. So we start with what we know. We start with markets we can access without a lot of barriers. And we often work with the hand we're dealt, the land or the forest we come with, the labor that we can manage ourselves, and the capital that's in our bank account. That's not to say it's the only way. I do know some farm business owners that have strategically done demographic research and purchased property in certain locations in order to start businesses. I will say that's often not the norm, though. Often we do start with the hand we're dealt. So that's often what determines your startup scale. I think the key question is for people to really think hard about where you go after that, when you top out with your initial vision or you top out with your initial markets. So the marketing plan will often have to be revisited, oftentimes within the first few years. In some cases, I think that's a sign of success. If people find that their current business or their current marketing plan has topped out, then that's a good sign. Say, hey, you've worked it. Now it's time to reassess. We always anchor back on these 5 P's of marketing: product, price, place, people, and promotion. Tonight, I'm going to focus mostly on product and price. Zach, again, will get into some more digital marketing aspects. So much to cover in a half hour, but let's dig into product and price a little bit and get you thinking about where you're at and if it's a good place to be, or maybe where you could stand to tweak your marketing plan a little bit. Features and attributes. When we look at a product, we have to think hard about what it is that we're selling. I've done a lot of presentations across the country, and you can see some pictures here of some of the different types of syrup, different product forms that we may see, from specialty sugar blocks to co-pack labels, even to like a bulk barrel. I get a little nervous when I give a presentation like this and I ask a group, what are the different features and attributes of their product? And they often come up with flavor or color, mostly referring to the grades, whether it's delicate or dark robust, and they stop there. Now, the world of features and attributes is a big world, and it's a fun world for people that have that marketing element under their belt. So let's try to take it a little bit further. Before I click ahead, just think a second. Try to identify 3 or 4 additional attributes to your product. And I can give you some hints. It doesn't have to be color and flavor. Think about the consumer experience. You could think about the packaging, the sizing, even the service related elements of how you interact with your customers. And when you think hard about your features and attributes, you're basically building a stronger vocabulary through which you can communicate to your customers. It gives you words, it gives you answers when people ask questions, and it gives you slogans or things you can put on labels. So we'll open it up a little bit more. And this isn't an exhaustive list, but it's certainly better than color and flavor. We've got size of packaging. Tourists can travel with different size containers than those that live in your neighborhood, that's for sure. The raw materials, the inputs that go into your syrup or maybe a syrup related product. You could have some style. You could have some style to your branding, quantity, pack sizes, purpose. Is this utility syrup, or is this a specialty product that gets mixed with cocktails? So those are some of the direct things, direct and a little bit of indirect there. Then we start to get to some other things like nutritional labeling, third-party verification, things that stray a little bit from the consumption of the physical product, but very much features and attributes that make your product experience something richer for your consumer. I've listed a few others here too. So I'd ask you, as we think about our marketing plans, to really think hard about your features and attributes. And then more importantly, think about if you're communicating the features and attributes in the right way to your current customer base, or maybe an opportunity to tap in to a different customer base. I'm used to doing a lot of questions and answers when I present. So I'd encourage you to use that chat box, and my intention is to hopefully get done well before a half hour so that we can answer a few of your questions if you got them. So we've got a lot of different features and attributes that build up your product. Be aware of them, be prepared to communicate them, and think about those ones that you can really push and the things that will really resonate with your target audience. Pricing strategies. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with vegetable growers in the past couple months that have made the pivot to some sort of curbside delivery related to the coronavirus. They've shifted their markets. And I had a lot of people jump right into doing curbside delivery or online sales. And then about a week or two later, we'd start to get some calls or some contacts through our business network. And they said, geez, maybe we need to price our product differently if we're driving it 20 miles further, or if we're handling every package in a way that we hadn't handled before. And that's right. Anytime you're pivoting and you're changing not just your product form, but the way you deliver your product, you need to consider your pricing strategy. Here's a really basic definition for pricing strategy: a balance of internal costs and customers' willingness to pay. I think those two play together they're really important, and they're often, they may appear sometimes in conflict. You've got to have a sense of your costs, and you've got to understand what your customers are willingness to pay. Ideally, there's a margin between the two. Sometimes a really wide margin. You'd be surprised what customers can be willing to pay if you get into the right segment or the right geographic location. You'd also be surprised to know what your costs are if you actually go through and do top to bottom cost management. This is a summary of the work we've done over the past 5 years, benchmarking maple business producers with their finances. And I will say, it may be boring, the top two expenses, labor and depreciation on assets. I don't work with a lot of clients where we sit and fret over the cost of oil for the evaporator or the cost of fuel wood. We don't even fret too much about marketing supplies. Really, we focus on the big fish: labor, both paid if you're paying employees, and the value of your unpaid labor. What kind of income do you give up with your efforts in your maple business? The other big one is depreciation on assets. How much have you invested in all that equipment? And is that woods equipment that you're going to get a high yield from your sugar bush for? Or is it processing equipment? With the sad reality, we know those sugar houses and that stainless steel often gets used for 12, 13, 14 days a season. That's a lot of capital to be sitting there, and it does depreciate. Luckily, resale values can be strong when the market is still expanding, but we know that the benchmark 25% depreciation on assets, it's dramatically higher than you might see a 12 or 15% for a dairy business or some other form of business. I do want to stop a second and say that I do feel like these business planning programs we often have a mix of people, very small scale to very large scale. And I'm not here to say it's right or wrong to be a commercially driven business or to be in the lifestyle of maple sugaring. I think there's benefit to putting a business planning lens on anything. I would remind you, though, if you're really trying to have fun and this is a lifestyle, maybe don't overanalyze it. But once you start spending money, I think you all know these costs do go up, and they're coming from some bank account somewhere if it's not your farm bank account, and you do need to justify them over time. So you can still get your pricing right, even if you're not necessarily trying to make a full-time salary. And I'll say our peers in the maple industry certainly appreciate when people get their pricing right. There's nothing worse than having somebody underprice their product because they haven't done their homework, and then having consumers get a really mixed message on what the market is like for the product. Okay, I mentioned these maple tools. We do have this pricing tool, which is really handy. We've had a lot of people go through this, probably over 100 since it launched several months ago, where you can go online with maplemanager.org and you can do a pricing forecast, and you can do bulk pricing. You can put in your pounds of bulk syrup. You see there on the left by the pound if you're looking at bulk markets. You can also use retail pricing. And if you look at that unit 1 section there, that's just a snippet. But you can put in your whole crop of 300 or 3,000 gallons of syrup, and you can work through all the different package sizes you intend to, and the pricing that you intend to sell them at, and work through and actually get a good forecast. And you'll see these adjustments of what happens when you sell your pints at $10.50 a pound versus if you think you can get $12.95 a pound for them, and look at the impact over the whole crop. So I'd encourage you to try that tool and see where you think they match your market and your customers' willingness to pay. Here's a fun one. I get my notes out for this. this is no this is no more complicated or no more simple than going on Amazon and looking at some different products. Go online and just take a look and see what's out there. See where the products are labeled, see what the features they are, the features they have that they promote, and then check the pricing. So I'm going to give you all a second. I've got some numbers here. I will tell you that the two syrup bottles on the left there are both 16 ounce pints. The one in the middle is a 32 ounce quart. And then the one on the far right is I believe it's 500 milliliters, which is pretty close to 16 ounces. Take a second. Think about the pricing. Think about the features. I'm not going to ask you what you would pay for syrup. Most sugar makers I know haven't bought syrup in decades. I'll tell you the prices. The one on the far left, the Barred Woods, $12.95 for 16 ounces. These are online. This isn't a statistical research product, just a quick sample. Okay, Nova, pure and simple, $12.95 a pint. Same price for the pints for 16 ounces, $12.95. Go into the middle there, Butternut Mountain Farm, 32 ounces, $14.97. Just about $1, $2 more for almost double. And then we'll go all the way over to the right, Skumiak. I really like this one. I think this one is marketed as very rare, extra rare syrup. I'm not sure what that means, but it's a nice glass bottle and it fetches $24 for 16 ounces, $24. And I think if some of you are math people, you can see where I'm going with this. Take those numbers, divide them by the ounce. Now you're really getting into price points, thinking about what's your price per factor, not just per package size, but actually on a per ounce basis. When we work with maple producers, we often find that retail and wholesale, and this is Vermont, very heavily driven by bulk sales. A lot of people doing bulk sales with most of their crop and then maybe doing retail and wholesale on the side. We know that people are really looking for a $75 per gallon or more equivalent. And I'll call that a $75 per gallon blended, meaning they're not selling their gallons for 75 bucks. I certainly hope they're not selling their gallons for $35 or $40 anymore, but maybe their gallons are going for 50 or 55. And then as you start breaking down into half gallons, quarts, pints, and even nips, you're going to get much higher price point, well over $100 per gallon equivalent for some of the very small package sizing. A lot of retail or a lot of labor goes into packing. A lot of labor goes into handling, especially if you got to go to direct sales outlets. But we definitely see people targeting well over $75 per gallon equivalent if they're really looking at retail, wholesale. I'm not going to get into the equations of margins and markups, but if you're doing retail, even if you're doing direct retail, I think it's important to understand your costs and then understand if you desire a certain margin or markup. Maybe a 30% markup, maybe what your grocery store might have, maybe 50, 60, 100% if you're into a specialty food store. So those are great conversations. If you're selling through other sales channels, talk to the buyers, ask them, what's their margin? What's their markup? Get familiar with those percentages. Then you can start to target your buy or your selling price to them and understand where the final product's going to get priced to the consumer. You may decide you want your product to always be sub $15 or sub $10. And you might have to work with the buyer a little bit on the price and the packaging sizing to nail it just like you want it. Okay, a couple more quick ones here. Let's talk about COVID. We actually gave this survey out this fall, so fall of 2019, and we asked people what resources would be most helpful to them. Top of the line was business planning, 41% of respondents, succession, sale, or exit planning, 27%, and look at 24%, continuity and resilience planning. Now, we're pretty sure that most people were probably thinking about things like climate change, windstorms, ice storms, key person loss at that time. We weren't thinking about a pandemic, but now here we are several months later, and we still have from the survey, a quarter of people thinking, what is my resiliency plan? So this is an important feature no matter what type of business risk you're facing. Thinking about the unknowns, trying to know the unknowns, and then trying to navigate. So let's talk about a few things we know that are happening with maple producers, at least in Vermont. If you've got some comments or questions, we could probably get into your region as well. First and foremost, labor management with COVID-19. People are concerned about their own safety as owners. They're certainly concerned about their employees, making sure that they have the right protocols following any guidance from your state or federal CDC to make sure that they're following the best practices, keeping people safe so that you can maintain operations. In the case of sugar makers, a lot of you, while you may work outside all the time or think you're isolated, you're the only person. You're the only person that knows the skill set, that knows the process, that knows how to navigate your particular operation. So you need to think about that. You need to think about, are you taking all precautions to make sure you can show up at work tomorrow? People are starting to rush and do SOPs, standard operating procedures, documenting how things go, the binder. How many of you have a binder, like the binder or the clipboard that gives instructions on how somebody else could switch your valves and do your setup and plug things in the right place to keep the business running? So first and foremost, I think people want to be safe. They want to keep their workforce safe, uninterrupted production or uninterrupted sales. Second, loss of markets. I can't hear you, but how many of you have lost markets? How many of you sold to restaurants, food service, or maybe a bookstore or a gift shop at a local college campus? Those sales have virtually dried up to zero. It happened overnight. In most regions, I know they haven't come back yet. So what do? Some people are pivoting. Zach's going to do a great presentation here on digital entrepreneurship. You may already be set up with digital entrepreneurship, not taking it all that seriously, but Corona's forced you to really take it seriously and really push more product. So that's not the only way to pivot, but think about, how can you pivot? How can you take your product? How can you repackage it, resell it, re-advertise it to a different market? I often emphasize partnerships. I know that some people really love online marketing. I know some people really love customer service. I know some people really love getting emails at all hours about issues with packaging or concerns or critiques, and they really want to manage that. So if that's the kind of person you are, then go for it. Shift into other direct market channels and see how you can do it. Oh, cool. We got a poll. We got a poll that popped up. So I'm not going to touch it. I don't want to, I can move it off to the side. I'd encourage you to do that poll. Have you lost markets? Have you lost markets since, I don't know, what is it, March 11th, March 12th? Back to partnering. If that's not your thing, if you're not into direct retail, if you're not into customer service, don't think that you have to suddenly sell all your syrup online. Chances are someone close to you already has maple syrup or a brand and maybe the channel and the logistics to move the product. So ask yourself, do I want to pivot, or is it in my interest to partner, to find somebody else that's got the skills and entrepreneurial wherewithal, but maybe I can get a premium if I move my product to them and let them pitch it under their brand. Look at that, 79% have lost markets. This is serious. This is serious business. So you're pivoting, you're thinking about partnerships, and then the key question here, do you want to wait or can you wait? Syrup can stay in inventory. I know some folks certainly like cash flow, but ask yourself, do you cause more damage, more risk? Do you spend more time that's really precious trying to chase retail sales that may never backfill that market? And what happens when that buyer comes back online in September and you say you're sold out? So in some cases, you're going to want to pivot. In some cases, you'll want to partner, but it's not wrong to say, I'm going to wait it out. And it may depend on your capital position. It's going to certainly depend on your expenses and your overhead. But in some cases, waiting it out with a storable product, if you can keep your product stored, may be a perfectly fine reaction. I got just one more here, but have I lost my click? Hold on. Oh, there we go. Okay. So cash flow pressure. Some folks are feeling it for sure already. The farmers markets have reemerged here in Vermont. They're very different. We've got a lot of concern. The market can be open, but we know people aren't driving over state boundaries as much as they were. So what's going to happen to those sales? So ask yourself again, you've got cash flow pressure. What's your mechanism to deal with the disruption? Is it to get more revenue in, or perhaps is there another way to do it? Do you have flexibility to still stash your inventory, work off farm? Do you have ability to bring in a line of credit, borrow money? I know that sounds nasty to some people, but again, think about your time and weigh the options. There are different ways to generate cash flow. And I'm saying this from the vegetable producers that went directly into online ordering and curbside sales. A lot of them said they've spent a lot of time and it felt really good to be active at the end of March and early April, but they realized they're not generating the sales that can keep up with the cost of this new form of business. And some of them have then backed off, We've certainly seen that with restaurants. Some of them did the carry out thing fine. Other people tried it for a week and then they closed doors and said, this isn't our business model. While all this business disruption, I think I do have to mention that there is the possibility that some of you are going to see a surge in demand. We do know the trend for relocalization of products and supply chains. We know right now from talking to major industry leaders in Vermont and Quebec that pure maple syrup is seeing a huge demand. People are at home. People are cooking at home. For years, we talked about innovative maple products because people didn't eat pancakes and waffles at home anymore. They simply weren't home. And now here we are, 6 months later, a surge in demand, a surge in home cooking. So if you're dealing with a surge in demand, again, think about the positives and the negatives of that. Get ahead on it. Have you bought ahead on materials for inventory and packaging so you don't run out? Have you communicated with buyers so they know how far you can go so they're not hung out to dry if you run out of supply? And then remember those old market channels that you used to sell to. When they come back on board, are you going to be able to supply what they need? So think about the potential of more sales and then think about all the different consequences. And again, try to get ahead of the game. So definitely a lot of cash flow pressure, a lot of business pivoting, but for some, we do know the demand is strong. So if you can position yourself in the right place in the market with the right partners, I'm really confident that over the next few months, you will move that syrup, maybe a little slower than anticipated, but it's going to go just fine until the next crop season. So with that, I think I'm going to stop. Maybe take questions now, or if the facilitators decide we'll shift to Zach, then I'm just going to wait till later on.
Hey, Mark, it looks like you have a question in the Q&A section, so maybe you can type an answer to that.
Sure, yeah.
and
I'm going to stop my share and
we'll hand this over to Zachary Smith.
okay, so it would be great if people, consumers, tell more what they like. It will help to propose some to them. How can we favorize that exchange of ideas, maybe facilitate those exchange of ideas? Well, I do know that there is a number of market research projects going on right now. University of Southern Maine is launching a new project, I believe New York, and I'd be interested to see if Mike Recklin's on what's going on with their program, but there's a number of market research projects happening right now. Vermont Agency of Agriculture did just post a market research project where they think consumer sentiment is on maple, and I expect more to come. So I'd say it's a great question. I don't have all the answers right now, but in the next 6 months to a year, I think we're going to see a lot of regional market research coming out based on this ACER program that's funding a lot of this work. So let's stay tuned on that, and we can watch to see where to target.
I'll hop in here because we do have some high hopes for big marketing projects in the future. But this past year, we also did some successful marketing surveys through a marketing firm, and they helped us identify and how to get out to the consumers. And of course, you know, maple syrup always does great in these surveys. People really like it compared to that corn syrup stuff.
Yeah, it's an easy sell.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So I'm going to mute off, and then maybe if there's questions or chats left, we'll get to them later.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, is my slide up?
Looks good.
Okay, great. So thanks, Mark. I'm going to follow up on a few things that Mark brought up, but primarily this session is going to be just about, it's going to be a general overview of how to get online and just like some major points to consider. I understand that a lot of businesses like your own are in different phases of being involved in online business. So some of this might be really new to you. Some of this might be old news, but please feel free to ask some questions along the way, and I'll leave some time to answer them at the end. I understand that I've been dealing with a variety of different producers during these times, and everybody has a different situation. And when you get into online business, there are a lot of options, and a lot of them are great options that you can't make a mistake with. But what I'm just going to talk about are the basics here. My background, I've worked in agricultural business education for about 15 years, but in the middle, about 2012, I decided to break off and start my own firm that consulted craftsmen entrepreneurs in how to develop an online presence. I did that for about 5 years, but full time, and got a little tired of being at my desk for 10 hours a day. So I got back into ag biz education and working one-on-one with farmers. So let me get going here. University of Vermont agricultural business, what we do is we work primarily one-on-one with farm, forest, and maple enterprises. Our programs and research provide direction for key stakeholders to advance initiatives that improve business outcomes in a dynamic agricultural sector. I understand that this is going to be a lot of information that I'm going to be sharing in a very short amount of time. So I will provide some ways to explore some of my points on your own, and I will also be available for a quick email or two in the future. So when I talk about digital marketing, I refer to it as an umbrella term for all of your online efforts you use to promote your business and to make a sale. The way I like to look at everything is to describe it as an ecosystem. You have your website, you have search engine optimization, social networks, advertising, email marketing, and e-commerce. These are the 6 areas that I really want to focus on and just go into some basics in each of these areas. When you're looking at your website, it's really, really important to start with your domain. That's the www.mybusiness.com. A lot of people think it's fun to play with words or have something significant that really means something to themselves, or make it really, really, really long. My advice on when you're choosing a domain is to first make it as absolutely relevant to your business, your location, and then also make sure that it's easy for people to remember. We're going to talk about this in the future, but direct traffic, which is traffic that goes to your site when someone remembers your domain name, is extremely important. So you want people to be able to remember that name really, like, right off the top of their head. I've had some people in the past make some really just odd names, and one nonprofit that I worked for was called Partners for Andean Community Health. Try to remember to spell that out correctly in the search box. So stuff like that. Just learn ways to condense and make it memorable. When you're talking about a host or a hosting of your site, that's basically where your site lives. It's where your files are hosted, are where they're living, basically. Providers for hosting sites and domains are, like, the main ones that you probably have heard of is GoDaddy. GoDaddy is very, very popular as a host for domains and for websites. I tend to feel that SiteGround is another host that excels in what they do. I feel that GoDaddy sometimes can be a little bit slower, and SiteGround is just a lot faster, and their customer service is excellent. One thing that I need everybody to always remember is also the amount of time that you're going to be investing in this. And a lot of time that you're going to be investing in your website development is actually working with customer service for these types of providers. While GoDaddy has excellent customer service, sometimes I'm online with them for 45 minutes before I can get an answer. Whereas SiteGround, I usually get answered in about 15 minutes. And like I said, this is something you're always going to have to understand that's going to happen is you're going to be, no matter what you choose, you're going to be spending some time with people, with these companies' customer services. Your website is what everybody sees. When you're developing your website, you want to look into just what fits your needs. We'll talk about a few different types of platforms in a little bit, but what I've noticed is every single type of agricultural producer has their own needs. They have their own environment in which they're selling. And some things make sense for them, and some things don't make sense. I feel that the number one thing that everybody brings up to me right now is cost. And cost is a really, really, obviously it's a major issue. Within cost, you got to think about, who's going to be doing this for you? Are you going to be doing this yourself? Are you willing to pay someone else that's probably going to charge you a premium to do this for you? And we'll walk through that in a little bit. Moving into search engine optimization. You might have heard of this before, but it's in short form is SEO. That's basically what happens. Well, search engines, your major search engines, which is like Google, which basically takes care of like 95% of all search traffic throughout the world. But what this means is whenever someone types in buy maple syrup near me or something like that, some results are going to pop up. And obviously your objective is to pop up in those top results. Major objective is to pop up in the top 1 to 3 search engine results when someone types in something related to your business. So it's really important to shoot for that goal. Search engine optimization, I could go into, I mean, like all of these topics, I could talk about it for hours on end. Many people only specialize in search engine optimization for their clients or for one client. But it is really important to focus on. These are also topics that you can just get in and Google and look at search engine results on how to improve my search engine optimization. It's extremely important. And one of the major points that I bring up there is search engine consoles. What can happen? Some services do this for you, and other times you have to do this yourself. But you want to make sure once your site is complete that you submit it to search engine consoles. When I say that, is basically like with Google Search Engine Console, is you submit your site map to Google, and what they do is they index everything on your site, every page, every word, every image, every video, and they log that. And they basically, what it does is you now become a part of their worldwide directory that people can search for you on. It's a little hard to grasp if you don't know what I'm talking about, but I would just say it's very, very important to submit your site to search engine consoles, or to make sure that your site builder is doing this once they have completed building your site. Going over a little bit, just understanding of like what the forms of traffic are to your site. This is extremely important to understand the basic forms of traffic to your site, because it influences the way that you actually create your marketing plan. Like I mentioned before, direct marketing or direct traffic is when someone already knows your site and they're coming to it or coming back to it. When you look at your direct traffic analytics, which we'll talk about a little bit, you see that when you see that growing, when you see that direct traffic growing, that means you're doing really well with your marketing efforts, because people are coming back to you. People are going back to your web pages. They want to see what you have to offer. Referral is also another excellent traffic to measure. That means traffic that is coming to your site from another site. Referral traffic can be utilized when you're working perhaps within a group, within a co-op or something like that, a collective. It's just good to be involved in your industry, sharing links to other affiliates of your business. Email marketing, I'm going to talk, or email traffic, I'm going to talk about in a little bit, but that's obviously people coming to your website from an email that you have sent to them. And social, obviously, we all know that social media is a very big influencer in what's going on online right now. So it's really good to measure your social traffic. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And organic traffic is the number one thing to focus on. All marketers like myself, we want to know and we want to look at organic traffic. That's basically traffic that results from good search engine optimization. It's traffic that comes to you when people are just, like I said, Googling maple syrup in my area or something like that. When you have good organic results, it just becomes exponential, because not only are people finding you and clicking on your listing and going to your website, but the major search engine consoles actually measure the health of your site. They'll notice that people come to your site, stay on it they'll measure how long they stay on your site. They'll measure if they're clicking around, if they're reading things on your site. So Google and other search engines, they actually award sites that have good search engine optimization and good, basically, healthiness of their site, meaning that the material on the site is valuable to the visitors. Social networking, I'll just go into a little bit about this. I've come to realize that a lot of people involved in agricultural business do not want to involve themselves whatsoever in social networking, and then a lot of other people really enjoy it. It's really up to you, but it does work when you have the time to dedicate to it. The biggest, I'll start with the negatives. The biggest negative that when undertaking social networking or social network marketing is not going all the way, not doing it, just putting up a Facebook page and just not even taking care of it, not utilizing it. You got to understand that you're going to have to put in several hours a week just to manage your social presence. But if you do, it's highly valuable. I feel that Facebook is something that, a lot of people have taken advantage of in this time as a way to inform their customers of what they're doing on the farm. It also has some really nice tools that can be used for customer service. People can message you really quickly and ask you a question, and you can respond just as quickly. Yeah, so I do recommend that people try out Facebook, not only to have a presence, but as I'll talk about it in a second, but you can also do some really cool advertising techniques through Facebook. And Instagram and Facebook, owned by the same company. I think Instagram has really taken some steps forward in making some valuable opportunities for advertising. Also, Instagram has that visual aspect that a lot of people like to just, click through and see what's going on the farm. I have a lot of farms here in Vermont that are really, really taking advantage of Instagram, where they get to tell their stories and like post up little quick videos of what's going on the farm, how they're doing with their sugar making, taking people into their sugar houses and showing how everything is going. What that does is it really breaks down that the distance between the client, the online client, and the farm that's so far away from them. So I really do recommend trying out Facebook and Instagram. LinkedIn is more for the professional. That is, like someone who's trying to network and actually do professional networking. I do recommend checking that out. Twitter is good for announcements. It's got a big following, but I feel that it does take a lot of effort. And Pinterest is a very interesting social network because of the audience that you're speaking to. Pinterest tends to be people who are do-it-yourselfers or even homesteaders, perhaps people that might like some authentic products like, some small batch maple syrup. Checking out Pinterest is very worth it. And I've heard some really good things about it. So is all of this worth it? Like I said, it's only going to be worth it if you're going to be able to dedicate some time to it. dedicate, not only dedicating time to getting it out there, but also creating some assets. You want to have, really nice pictures. You want to have really nice videos. You want to have really nice messaging. What I tell a lot of people is once someone sees something on a screen that you have published, they can't unsee it. So you have to be very, very careful in planning what you're going to put out there in your messaging. Advertising, like I said, Facebook and Instagram are really, you can really do some good work with Facebook and Instagram. Not only are they easy to use, but you can easily do some targeting. Targeting is really important when you're advertising. You just don't want to throw stuff out there and see if someone's going to bite. You want to make sure that you know your audience. You want to do a little profile of your audience. And that usually starts with who's currently buying your product. What are their motivations for wanting to buy your product? And then considering markets that you want to move into. And I do know I did have a maple producer this winter tell me that they target heavily in Northern California, San Francisco area, all the way from Vermont, just because of the Vermont brand and all that. So try out some stuff. Try that geo targeting where you can you can target people by their zip codes. You can target people by their interests that they share online. It's pretty interesting and it's worth getting into. And it's easy to pick up. Another thing to consider with this advertising is linking it to your offline efforts. If you know you're going to be at a farmer's market or at an event, or you have your farm stand, you want to attract people that are going to be around you. So geo targeting is a good thing to try out and get into. Facebook and Instagram, you just got to understand you're probably going to be wasting a little bit of money in the beginning as you learn how to do it, but slowly but surely you'll be able to develop some valuable return on your investment. Google and other search engines, they do have those advertising capabilities. Google, like I said before, has such a wide breadth of exposure for you. But I do find that for new entrepreneurs, digital entrepreneurs, their advertising is a little difficult to figure out. The good thing is like Facebook and Instagram, Google has instructionals on how to advertise step by step on online. So just Google how do I get onto Google Ads or something like that, and they will provide great instructionals on how to do that. So like why I said, why should you advertise online? It really is, it is really worth it. I think, especially for maple producers, on finding some new markets. It's pretty easy. You just got to understand, like what Mark was talking about too, is the costs involved in doing this. It's not just the cost of the marketing, but it's also your costs of your shipping and your time. So definitely consider all of that. And when you're offline, when you're out and about, I tell everybody to always make sure that you're promoting your business, your online. If you have an online entity, it better be on your offline promotional materials, like your pamphlets, your cards, everything like that. Always provide links to your online entities. Email marketing is extremely effective. And basically that's, what the reason why I focus on email marketing is you're getting people to tell you that they want to hear from you. That's what we consider a micro agreement. They're already saying yes to your product. So when you get them coming in, you want to make sure that you're emailing these people, letting them know what you're doing, what's going on farm, what are your discounts, what are your promotions. The best inbound marketing software, I believe, is MailChimp and Constant Contact. And if you want to dive into really being able to understand what your clients are doing, HubSpot is an excellent platform for that. Email marketing is the highest converting channel of traffic in digital marketing. Across the board, that's been that way for over 10 years. The reason why is, like I already said, people already know who you are. They've already asked you to communicate with them. Now they want to hear about what you got. E-commerce. this is good. It's a little tough. I'm a little pressed for time, but I'll just say that, some people just go, they want to do it themselves. They'll build a site like on a WordPress platform, and they'll get going on that, and they'll integrate an e-commerce component. You can do stuff like that where you get your store up, you get a payment gateway, which connects your business, your banking account to your online store. And then you also have to make sure that you're taking care of security measures. Always make sure whatever you choose, that whatever you're doing, whatever platform you use, that you have the highest security that you possibly can, which usually includes a SSL certificate that encrypts all of the information that's being entered in your online store, so that the bad elements out there in the digital world won't be able to steal that information. Right now, the top platforms that I've always promoted are Shopify and BigCommerce. They're all-in-one platforms, and they have outstanding customer service that can walk you through everything. Gray's Cart is something that is more for people who have CSAs, Farm to Door, Farmigo. Those are some other ones that are really popping up lately. And then other people are integrating their Square accounts that they use at farmers markets with a Wix website. There are so many different options out there. I couldn't say go with just one, but with agriculturalists, I feel that it's best to go with something that is an all-in-one package, like a Shopify, BigCommerce, Gray's Cart, Wix, something like that. And like I said, their customer service is excellent. Any type of question that you have, go straight to them. More to consider. Make sure that you're putting out good content. Make sure everything is valuable to the people that you want to attract to your business. Don't do all me. Talk about the benefits of your products to your clients. And you can put that in Word format when you're promoting it, and you can also use visual support for that in pictures and videos. Another thing to consider is the buyer's journey. How do these people find out about you, and what makes them ultimately make a purchase online? Map that out, put it on a wall, on a whiteboard or something like that. But really understanding what your target markets are and what their journey is to completing a purchase or a repeat purchase with your product is very important. Like I said, a really important thing is who's going to put it all together. Are you going to be able to do it on your own? Do you have the capacity to do it, which is probably going to take about 40 hours total time just to get a website up and running? It's up to you. Or do you feel like you can hire someone? If you hire someone, do not just go out and say, I want a website, who can do it for me? Talk to people that you know who have successful online businesses that are similar to yours. Get recommendations. Don't go online and hire someone from across the world that just has a good price point. It's really, really important to have confidence with someone who's building your site, have everything and understanding of what they're going to do for you when they build that site. Also, make sure that you understand what's going to happen when they pass the site off on to you. What are your monthly responsibilities as far as maintenance and also expenses? So make sure you get that written out and agreed upon. Measuring performance, this is really short, but everything that you're doing should be getting measured. I consider a website as a salesperson, so they have to have something that they have to live up to something. So you should have some key performance indicators, and those are usually, website visits, website sales, and etc. Google Analytics is a free service, and it's very, very worth getting to know and look into. I can't recommend it enough. If you're going to have a website, you better have analytics on it, and Google Analytics is the best out there for your, people like ourselves. So I understand that was extremely fast and a lot of information. Mark and I keep adding information to maplemanager.org. I have business planning, digital marketing templates on there. And we are going to continue to put educational material for the agricultural entrepreneur on that website. So yeah, I don't know if we have enough time, but I'll look around if there's any questions. Any thoughts related to?
Yeah, Zach, you do have a question in the Q&A section, but for time wise, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Marlo, and I'm going to share her screen for her. So if you can address that question in the Q&A.
Yeah, I'll type my answer in there.
Cool, that'd be great. Thank you. Marlo, you ready?
I am, thanks. Wonderful, thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Marlo Long, and I'm a Community Development Manager at BB&T Bank, now Truist. When I was asked to put together a presentation on banking and finance, we were really talking about how the COVID crisis has impacted many of our agricultural and small businesses due to lack of sales, canceled events, and other loss of revenue. And during times of uncertainty, especially when we have loss of revenue, it can be a time of financial stress. If you could move to the next slide for me. During times of difficulty like that of COVID, many businesses experience a disruption in their business. You might be experiencing decline in sales of your product, a reduction in markets to sell your products, increased cost of raw materials, supply chains disruptions, which may result in not being able to move your product, resulting in a backstock of inventory, or a disruption in necessary supplies needed to produce your product, resulting in inventory shortages. There could be increased regulatory costs of doing business in the COVID environment. You may have staff unable to come back to work due to illness or other family obligations. Your customers may be in financial hardship and unable to pay their invoices that are due to you, especially if you're selling in a wholesale market. And you personally may find yourself or your business in financial hardship and unable to pay bills, creditors, or other obligations. Next slide, please. So if you find yourself experiencing financial stress, the first recommendation that we have is really take a deep breath and then take stock. Review your personal situation and ask yourself, are you in personal financial hardship, or is your small business in financial hardship? It's not uncommon for many small farms or small businesses to be started on a shoestring and funded with our own personal resources, such as our personal savings accounts, personal credit cards, a home equity loan, a retirement distribution. It is not uncommon to seed fund and to start a business using your own personal resources. Typically in that business journey, as the business starts to get more established, many business owners will move into small business accounts and may take out small business loans to help fund their business or business credit cards. Sometimes personal and business funds are commingled. After all the hard work it takes to create a product or to sell your service, the last thing most of us want to do is have more administrative hassles. But for several reasons, you really need to pay attention to keeping your personal and your business bank accounts separate to avoid the commingling of funds. One of the reasons this is so important is if you find yourself in financial distress, you really need to take stock of whether or not it is your personal obligations or your business obligations, and to be able to separate those out. So when you start talking to your creditors, your bankers, and other obligations that you may have to pay, you've been able to take stock to know, is this a business expense or is this on my personal credit card or my personal home line of credit? Because you're going to have different leverages and different negotiating tactics on how to handle that debt pressure based on whether or not it is a business debt or a personal debt. And next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about commingling of funds. This is not uncommon. However, it is a practice that most bankers, accountants, and lawyers will ask you to avoid. Depending on your legal structure, if you're structured as an LLC or some other legal structures, commingling of funds can actually put you in jeopardy for the protections of personal financial liability. So there's also IRS factors and a lot of confusion when banks try to evaluate the creditworthiness of a business. So keep that in mind, that commingling of funds is not recommended, and that it is good business practice to keep those two things really separated. So what is commingling of funds? What are the things that accountants, the IRS, and your banker would ask you to avoid? Basically, such things as bank deposits made payable to your business from a client that's deposited into your own personal account. Making withdrawals from your business checking account to pay personal expenses without documentation. Depositing your personal money to pay for your business expenses. Using the same bank account for your business and personal needs. Writing business checks for personal expenses. Using a personal credit card for business expenses to get points. And moving money back and forth between your business and personal accounts without documentation. And that without documentation is the critical piece of that. Next slide, please. So what can you do to address commingling of funds? You really want to set in a professional mindset with a separate business account. Lawyers, bankers, the IRS, and accountants will view mixing business and personal funds as sloppy and inadequate record keeping. It also makes your accounting difficult and inaccurate. Accounting is more than just doing your taxes. Accounting tells how your business is performing. It tells what's doing well and what needs improvement. And sloppy record keeping and accounting means that you can't figure out which parts of your business are winners and which are losers. You won't know which products have the highest gross margin or which ads bring in the highest return on your investment. It's really important to have a decent piece of small business accounting software. There's a lot of good options out there. QuickBooks is probably the most common, but there are others that are more than adequate for small online businesses to even larger and more complex businesses. Next slide, please. Remember, with commingling, you can't deduct what you can't document. Keeping track of business incomes and expenses is crucial to minimizing taxes and maximizing your deductions. It is not uncommon for small business owners to pay more than the law requires because there's not a good system of tracking of expenses. Having a separate account, a bank account for your business, allows you to run all those business transactions through that account. And that's the most minimal way of tracking your business expenses that you may need for tax deductions later down the road. And again, as I had mentioned, commingling of funds may jeopardize the tax benefits and other benefits of having an LLC. Next slide, please. So once you've made that determination whether or not your financial difficulties fall into the personal bucket, it's a personal liability versus it is what might be considered a business obligation. The best thing to do is to talk to your creditor or your banker at the first sign of trouble. The earlier you reach out for assistance, the more likely it is that they can help. If you wait too long to ask for assistance, it may be too late to assist. So really, the earlier into financial trouble that you reach out to your banker and your creditors, the much better you're going to be in the long run. When you reach out to your creditors and your bankers, you want to be prepared. You want to be able to discuss what your business challenges are and what your game plan is to get out of the situation. Asking for help and not having a plan to explain how you're going to get back on your feet and repay any temporary assistance that might be provided is an important part of that conversation and negotiation. It also leaves the creditor feeling that they're talking with someone who has a firm grasp on their business and a true interest in fulfilling their obligations over the long term. On the business expense side, when you're talking to a business banker, you're really going to want to have your personal financial statement, a profit and loss statement, a balance sheet, a cash flow analysis, and your plan to be able to repay your obligations. If you don't have these documents, or if these are things that you're thinking, what is a cash flow analysis? It's probably a good idea to reach out to your local accountant or your local small business development council for assistance in preparing and helping you present your financial situation to your creditors or your obligors. It is not uncommon for payment deferrals, refinancing of existing debt, and obtaining a new loan to assist with cash flow needs may be able to be negotiated to assist with business expenses. Next slide, please. So both on the business and the personal side, there are 11 key options for consideration to assist during times of financial stress. One is to look into short-term financing. For some businesses, a loan might help you get through that immediate cash crunch until other forms of small business aid come through. For others, a short-term financing may help them continue operations while they restructure or pivot their business model. There are some special COVID-related programs that are out there, and the Small Business Administration and your local small business development center, as well as your banker, can discuss what these options are in more depth. But several of the programs include the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan Assistance Program, as well as the Paycheck Protection Program. A lot of financial institutions are currently offering low-rate credit card offers, including balance transfers and lines of credit or term loans to assist during these cash flow crunches. Financing is generally leveraged when you have a clear plan for how it will help you make money. But these are unusual times. Businesses will find it helps to use financing to keep your operations going during a crisis. Again, when you're negotiating with your creditors for assistance, it's really important to have that clear plan on how you're going to recover from your business, how you're going to pivot, and how you plan to repay any additional financing or debt that may be taken on to assist during these temporary cash flow issues. Next slide, please. Some options include crowdfunding. There are a lot of loyal customers out there that are willing to support your business in time. Kiva is one of the platforms that are out there that offers small business loans with grace periods of up to 6 months, 0% loans up to $15,000. Mainvest is offering a 2,000 0% loans for some bricks and mortar businesses who use the site to raise capital, and GoFundMe is offering guidance to small businesses looking to use its platform to crowdfund during the coronavirus outbreak. Next slide. Pivoting your business model. Adding delivery or adding the online options. Sites like Shopify, Squarespace, or GoDaddy make creating websites and taking orders fairly easy. Many business owners can get their website online by the end of the day. If you've got kids who are at home with school closures, get them to help you. They're probably a lot more handy than we are. It's really important, as previously heard, to update your online presence and let people know that you're still open to the public if you are. You want to update your business listing with updated hours, and make posts that, announce that you're still open. And be sure to update your social media accounts and like Instagram and Facebook to let people know that you're still open for business or that you've added a new online or delivery option. Next slide, please. Negotiate with your clients, suppliers, and vendors. Your suppliers and vendors are well aware of what's going on, and they may be able to negotiate lower payments or longer payment terms for a period of time. If you have good business credit with your existing suppliers and vendors, they want to keep your business in the long run, and many of them will be flexible about deferring or accepting reduced payments or deferred payments during this time of crisis. You may have clients who are not experiencing a significant disruption to their business. Don't be afraid to ask them for more work or ask them if they can pay you sooner. Many businesses especially your client businesses, understand the cash flow crisis, and many that have funds are more than welcome, are more than interested in helping to support the local business community. Another option is to consider invoice factoring or financing to get paid faster. Next slide. You can negotiate to make lower credit card payments. There are times when paying off credit cards just doesn't make sense when it's not possible. You could reduce your payments by making the minimum payments. If you can't make your minimum payment, you're most likely going to be charged late fees and interest. And if you have a business credit card, your interest rate may immediately go up if you're late on payments or make below the minimum payment. Right now, many credit card holders and banks are offering 90-day deferred payments to assist businesses and consumers with credit card payments, as well as car loans and other installment consumer loans. So do not be afraid to reach out to your creditors and ask to see if a 90-day deferral is an option for you in terms of credit card repayment. Next slide. Talk to your lenders. And again, the earlier that you talk to them, the better. They do not want you to default on your payments. They may be able to work with you if you get a hold of them in advance to restructure your debt temporarily. They may say, okay, let's do interest-only payments and defer all the principal and interest for 6 months, right? So they can reduce or help you restructure. But if you don't call them and just don't make payments and then try to reach out 6 months down the road, they're probably not going to want to talk to you. So the earlier, the better. Don't start missing payments or late payments without reaching out and talking to your creditors. If you have certain SBA loans, the federal government is again offering a 90-day or up to 6-month deferred payments for various types of loans. Next slide, please. If you have a landlord, if you're having trouble paying rent for your business location, don't ignore your landlord. Explain what's going on and ask to make smaller payments. Some landlords are going to be more flexible than others, but it's unlikely that in these times they're going to be able to easily rent your empty space. So there's a good chance they're going to work with you to avoid having that space sit empty, especially if you've been a good tenant and have a long-standing relationship with your landlord. If you own your commercial space, it might be time to consider refinancing. Rates are very low right now, and many business owners are reporting success in refinancing to lower their payments or even getting cash out if they've got equity in their property to provide a cash cushion. Next slide. Personally, this is not related to business debt, but this is more personal debt. If you find yourself just overwhelmed, reach out to a credit counseling agency. You want to be careful. There's good credit counseling agencies and bad credit counseling agencies. Some are very effective, others are scams. Visit the National Foundation for Consumer Credit Counseling Services. And the 1-800 number provided here will get you to that national organization, and they route you to a local consumer credit counseling agency. They can assist, if necessary, with what they call debt settlement plans. Debt settlement plans are where the consumer credit agency negotiates on your behalf with your creditors. These are typically revolving debts, credit card debt, and some medical debt. Typically what they'll do is negotiate to have the late fees and interest hikes reduced. They may have a lot of the interest eliminated, and you pay one payment to the consumer credit counseling agency, and then they, on behalf of you, make the negotiated payment to the creditor. Generally, you agree not to take on new debt while you're involved in the settlement plan. It does have a ding on your credit, but it's better than bankruptcy. Final slide. And when all else fails, bankruptcy is an option. Consulting with a bankruptcy attorney doesn't mean you have to file, but it may provide you with important questions and answers that might help make you sleep a little bit better at night. For some small business owners, it's really important to have that plan in place.
Okay, I think we're ready to go. The first three presenters tonight told me all the things that I've been doing wrong for a long time, and it was very helpful information. Here, brief introduction. Ruth and I started our maple business in 1979, but my family's been making maple syrup here in Cabot, Vermont since 1793. And we strongly suspect that our first ancestors to arrive on the Americas arrived in 1620 on the Mayflower and started making maple products directly following. So we've been at this a very long time and seen lots of changes. I want to first focus on 4 different types of sales of maple products. The first type is bulk sales, which is the focus of my presentation. And that's typically sold in barrels to a company that will then package and market the product. Bulk containers are generally 40 gallons or larger, and sometimes as large as tanker loads. This is the lowest price that a producer will receive for his product. And it's generally speaking, the easiest sale to make. Once you develop the contract, then it's a matter of delivering your product to the packager, and you pick up a check and you go home and your marketing work is finished. But most small producers especially certainly can't survive on the rate of return on bulk sales. The next type of sale is what we call wholesale, and that would be syrup that would be packaged in retail containers, sold to a retailer or a processor, and that retailer would then prepare the product for sale and bring it to market. These sales are very hard. There's lots of competition out there, either from other maple producers or from other types of sweeteners. And so we have to portray the advantages and benefits of maple in this forum. Then we go to retail sales. This is maple syrup that is packaged, ready to use. It goes to the end user, and those sales can be accomplished either directly, face-to-face, or online, as we've heard earlier this evening. This is where we can receive the best value for our product, but it takes the most expense and the most effort to create the sales. Then finally, the fourth method is when we are working in our sugar house, working really hard. We've already tapped all our trees. We've put up all the fuel wood to boil the sap. We've made all the investment on the equipment. And we have friends and family that come in to help. And they want to hang around the sugar house and be in the way. The kids break things, cause messes. And then they want to go home with a large container of your maple syrup for free. So this does happen, and sometimes it's okay, sometimes it's not. So the sale of bulk maple syrup is, as I said, the easiest method. There's some do's and don'ts. We're going to start with the small end of bulk sales. We actually supply syrup in gallon jugs to food distributors that then deliver to the end users, which is typically restaurants and commercial kitchens, cafeterias. Needless to say, this line of our business has fallen off dramatically in the past 3 months. So this can also work for small producers that may want to put up syrup for other processes and packaging later on in the season. Gallon containers work fine. I urge people to not try to use 5-gallon jugs. They're just too heavy for most people to handle. There is no mechanized method of handling them, and they're just really painful. There's no cost benefit unless you're going to reuse them, and I don't encourage anybody to reuse plastic containers. Then we move into barrels. If we could change the slide. Barrels, we need to select what type of barrel and what material these barrels are going to be made out of. Historically, we used galvanized steel barrels. These were actually quite horrible. Not anything you'd ever even want to water a cow out of, but we packaged maple syrup in them. In the early 1990s, we explored the use of stainless steel barrels. They're extremely expensive, but they can last a lifetime. Some of the ones we bought in 1990 are still in use and working wonderfully well. They come in several sizes, and you need to know which size is going to be the best suited for your particular business. Packers. Packers, I didn't define packers yet, but packers are companies that purchase your maple syrup and then package it into the retail containers. They are not happy about plastic barrels anymore. They find that the syrup is apt to ferment in these barrels much quicker than it will in stainless steel. So stainless steel is really the barrel of choice today for long-term use. Sometimes we send syrup in barrels away to other sugar producers as far away as Ohio. And when you do that, you don't want to send a barrel that you expect to get back. It's too costly to send an empty barrel halfway across the country. So we package that into epoxy-lined steel barrels that are quite economical to purchase and one-time use. Sometimes producers try to get multiple years of use out of these. We don't encourage it. Barrels are equipped with openings that we call bungs, and the cover that seals the bung needs to be appropriate for the barrel you're using, and a gasket suitable for that bung and cover. Cleaning barrels is really tricky. They're hard to clean because there's only a tiny opening. So we have, and we'll see it in a future slide, we have developed a barrel cleaning device that works very well. Storing barrels, either empties or full, we need to consider the space and allow for that space so that we can work effectively. I've helped many maple producers develop a business, and virtually always they forget to allow space for barrels. And at our Eden facility especially, it takes a lot of floor space to store our empties ready to fill and our full ones that are ready to ship out. Next slide, please. Okay, we've already seen this one. Okay. So barrels. Gallon jugs weigh 12 pounds. They're easy to handle for virtually anybody. A restaurant owner can easily pick up a gallon.
There you go.
Sorry for the interruption, but I think we're better now. Next slide, please. So, as I said earlier, historically, galvanized barrels were used. They're no longer allowed to be used because of the content that is in the galvanizing of the barrels. Plastic is not a suggested container. There's no law that says you can't use them, but some packers won't accept them. And next slide, please. Labeling. Be sure to put your name on your barrels in such fashion that it can be seen from a distance and not confused with someone else's. The initials for our sugar house, Goodrich Maple Farm, is GMF. We have a very close neighbor that is Goodwin Maple Farm, and so they are GMF as well, so you have to be careful that way. Last night's presentations, lady spoke about being from a small community. I doubt that it's a smaller community than Cabot, Vermont, but it's highly possible. We have 1,000 people in our town and no less than 15 sugar houses in our town. So maple is a big deal in Vermont. Clearly mark your barrels with what's in them, and we need to have a sample for each barrel. 1 ounce glass bottle is acceptable. Next slide, please. We use a gummed label to put on each barrel so that we indicate the grade, the net weight in the barrel, and a code that likely would be the date of its production and the sequencing of the barrel in the year's production. So the first barrel filled would be barrel 1, and the last barrel would be, in a good year, something in the neighborhood of 1,500 barrels. Next slide, please. Cleaning barrels is essential. Just hot water is what we use. No soaps or detergents, no chemicals of any kind. We have a very delicate food product that we're putting in these barrels that can absorb a flavor or odor from anything it comes in contact with. But it's essential to spray really boiling hot water into the barrels under quite a lot of force. So we've actually developed our own barrel washing machines to do this. Next slide. And that's what it looks like. Very simple, but very effective. Next, please. The spray ball has holes perforated in a circular pattern, of course, to spray the entire interior of the barrel. We know when the barrel is clean when you just can't plain put your hand on the barrel. And then you know it's in good shape. Heat is a really good sanitizing agent. Next. How do we handle barrels? When we first started, we didn't have any means of handling barrels other than bull strength and ignorance, and it was dangerous, difficult, but yet we were young and strong in those days. We used drum carts. We have a grabber for roof skid steer and a forklift so that we can handle barrels pretty efficiently and safely. And we want to make sure when handling barrels that nobody is in an area where they could be injured if that barrel should tip over. We hope that never happens, but I've seen it happen before where a barrel gets away from somebody and it could cause serious damage. And then secure your barrels. You got a lot of money sitting there and you don't want to let anything slip away from you. So I sleep right at the sugar house at Eden during the entire production season, and that's becoming more and more common these days that a producer stays right at the facility. There's a lot going on, and it doesn't stop at quitting time. It continues through the night, and some days you just don't even see your pillow, but that's the nature of the business. Next, please. So this slide shows some of our barrels lined up in our sugar house in Eden. The reason that I put this slide in our mix is it shows that we work hard to organize things so that it's neat, orderly, and tidy. We can have buyers come into our facility at any time and want to see what we do. And so seeing something that's neat, clean, and tidy is really, really important. And organization always helps us. Next. So the drum carts that we use can tip a barrel on its back and dispense syrup right out of it. So for a small producer, they could, with no equipment or pumping of any kind, be able to dispense syrup out of a barrel simply by installing a valve in the bung and tip it down on its side and dispense into a pail. Here in this picture is a Cabot facility. We have barrels stacked 2 levels high, and this picture is only partway through the season. So there's not many barrels in the storage, but at the end of the season, it's completely full. Next. Oh, yeah, you also saw on that last slide a bridge crane that I've constructed to be able to stack the barrels up safely. Filling barrels, we want to try to fill a drum in one boiling so that the syrup that's in that barrel goes in hot. It's sealed while it's hot. Then the barrel is vacuum sealed, and the syrup will store very nicely for years if you have to. Cash flow doesn't generally allow us to store syrup for years, but we know with confidence that it's going to be the same quality of syrup coming out of the barrel as went into it. Airspace is not good, so we tip our barrels by setting a simple 2x4 block of wood under the bottom rim of the barrel, so that it tips the barrel a bit and purges all the air out of the top. When the barrel's full, we put the bung plug in, make sure it's the appropriate gasket in good condition, and seal it. Meanwhile, we have collected a sample bottle so that we know what syrup is in that barrel, because we do not want to open it until it's ready to be used. Next. Filling the barrel. First off, you can see in this picture the barrel is clean. It's food appropriate. The hose that's filling the barrel is clear so that we can see the syrup going into the barrel. Occasionally, your neighbor might have a filter that would rupture and allow unfiltered syrup into the barrel. You want to be able to see this instantly and stop the flow, fix the problem before you end up with a barrel full of unfiltered syrup. So the clear hose is essential. Next. Samples, as I've said, required by virtually all the packers now, and we want to have a nice clear sample bottle so that we can demonstrate what's in that barrel without opening it. Next. This picture is a little bit blurry, but it shows the sample bottle, and we have found that we can store these right in the bung plug and have it available at each barrel at any time. If we're going to store the barrels for a long period of time before it goes to market, we would want to refrigerate the samples so that they're not necessarily hot packed, and the syrup could start to mold in those containers because they're not hot sealed. Next. A cool, clean, dry, secure, rodent-free, animal-free, pest-free site is ideal for storing barrels. And we've worked extra hard here to create space like that so that our syrup stores nicely for long periods of time. Stacking, you have to be really careful if you're going to put barrels up more than one layer on the floor. But we do stack 2 deep here at Cabot, and in the future we can stack as many as 3 layers deep at Eden, just to gain more storage space. Make sure the drums are stored sealed well. The barrels that you get, you need to specify how many openings you want in each barrel. Historically, barrels had what we call a side bung, which was in the cylindrical portion of the barrel halfway up, that cylindrical sleeve. And that was for venting so that you could drain syrup out of the barrel easily. We don't need that feature or function with our barrels, so we don't order a barrel that way. Just another opening that could potentially leak. Next. So using syrup from drums. Once we open a drum, we need to use it fairly quickly. This is all dependent on how cool the space is where that's going to be stored. We need to remember there are no preservatives in maple syrup. Nothing at all is added. And so it has a short shelf life if it's not vacuum packed. So we need to open a barrel and get it completely utilized within about 10 days of time before we could notice some potential problems. And you always want to keep track of the flavor and smell. When we make syrup, I get saturated with sweetness. I have to kind of step out of the sugar house in order to do taste sampling. Luckily, Ruth is a certified grader, and together we can work with this and know just what we've got. But it's a tricky part of the business. Next. Shipping bulk syrup. We load up our truck. We have a very large truck. It can handle 72 40-gallon barrels. When we load that and take it to market, we want to know exactly what's in it and keep excellent records so that we know which barrel went where and who's got that barrel, where we should expect to get that back from when it's empty. We don't want to lose $200 barrels. So it's essential that we keep accurate records of where each one goes. Next. Processing grade is the syrup that happens at the very end of the season. As the trees are preparing to open buds, the flavor of the syrup can change overnight. This syrup does have a place. It's used in processing of other foods as a flavoring or sweetener, and it has value. It's not as good a value as table grade syrup, but it's something that, depending on where your markets are, you can utilize. And for us this year, we had 200 barrels of processing grade syrup that we made, and 200 barrels is enough certainly to pay our power bill, our fuel bill, and some others for the entire year. So it's worth making. We just have to know how much we can market and where it's going to go before we make it. Next. So keep our sugar house manageable. I don't know that I've ever done that, but if it's totally manageable, I don't think we tried hard enough. Keep it safe. Yeah, most of the time I do that. We have to be watchful about burns and so on. Make the best quality product that you can. Then you have buyers coming to you wanting your crop rather than you going to them begging to take it. That's really the difference. If you're going to do it, it's worth doing well. And train the next generation. Next slide, please. This is Emma Rose, our next generation of sugar makers. She, in this picture, is just about 1 year old and is already doing many operations around here. She helps drive the truck. Her mom is our truck driver, and Michelle does an amazing job. A non-traditional job for a young woman to drive a ginormous sack truck that hauls 6,000 gallons on a load and over difficult, challenging roads. But we all get to help here, and it works out quite well. In closing, I would finally mention that what we've heard earlier this evening and last night is way more important than what I've talked about tonight. If we can work harder to develop direct sale markets, we'll do a lot better for ourselves. Here at Goodrich's Maple Farm, we sell a big portion of our crop as direct retail, again, a good portion of our crop as wholesale, and the final is our bulk sales. Anytime we can entice a consumer to try our product and use it in their world, we will find that we have a customer for life in most cases. And even if they don't buy from us directly in the future, they're buying from somebody, and a sale to anybody that makes maple syrup is a great sale. When it transfers into a sale of high fructose corn syrup or cane sugar, that's not a good sale. So we try really hard to keep our customers happy, well fed, and smiling in all cases. And that will do it. We can open up for any questions.
Oh, that was a great note to end on. Thank you, Glenn. We do have a question from Matt here, and he's wondering what a restaurant sale would be called. He said some may buy as much as 15 to 30 gallons. I guess he's wondering if you would still consider that bulk sale. We didn't really touch
Here, yeah, here we would consider that a wholesale.
Mhm.
And we would recommend that sale to happen in gallon jugs. We have palletized gallons that go out of here, 144 gallons per pallet. And that's the most economical way for a restaurant to use maple syrup. And it's easy for their personnel to handle the container. And you don't expect to get it back. When they're finished, they can go into recycling. And it's challenging to get the product to them, but it's worse to try to get an empty container back.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I hate to take that last slide down because it was so adorable. But I just wanted to thank everyone again for joining us tonight. It looks like that's all the questions for tonight. I want to remind everyone that if you go to www.future.edu/maple and hit the register now link, you find that flashes up next to our friend Christoph here, responsibly wearing his mask. It'll bring you to this page, and you can rewatch tonight and last night's webinars if you go to these links here circled in red. And that'll conclude tonight's session. Thanks again. Feel free to reach out to any of us if you have questions. On that same website, in the next few days here, we'll have all of these slides up available for you to download and revisit if you're interested. All right, and thank you everyone, and thanks to all of our speakers. And we'll see you later.